there, soulmates. Welcome to FOXSOUL's Black Report for Wednesday, November 7th. I'm Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nicordelai Corte. You know, each day we are honored to stand behind this desk to take you on a journey across Black America. Bringing you our news, our views, and our voice. And topping our news today, early voting. That's right, Courtney. According to a new Gallup poll, more Americans are planning on casting early ballots than heading to the polls. 41% of registered voters say they've already voted or plan to do so during early voting periods. Now, that's a 34% increase from the 2018 midterms and even higher than the 2010 and 2014 elections, where early voting only hit 26%. In the South, however, we are seeing more Black churches hosting Souls to the Polls events, which encourage voters to cast their ballots early and make voting more accessible for those in our community. This all comes as Black voting is up in Georgia despite the limited amount of ballot drop boxes throughout Black and brown communities. A new project aimed at improving the Black community needs your help to increase outreach. Now, in 2018, the Black Census Project conducted the largest survey of Black people in the U.S. since Reconstruction. Over 30,000 Blacks from across the country participated in that inaugural census. Now, to make even more history, organizers need you, soulmates, just like you, soulmate, you hear me, to show up for this new census that they want to conduct. Now, the Black Census Project needs to survey now at least 200,000 Black Americans with the overall goal to hold elected leaders more accountable to our Black interests. So make sure you take some time out of your very busy schedules and show that you count by filling out the Black Census at blackcensus.org by November 30th. You know, I filled out my Black Census over at Afropunk in New York, and so get to it. While we're talking about Black Census, we got to talk about Black men. Black men say they feel ignored and neglected by politicians. A recent political analyst suggested that the issue that Black men care about the most aren't the priority of many candidates. While research shows that Black men have increasingly supported Republicans in recent years, many feel as though the GOP is still missing the mark when it comes to Black issues such as financial freedom and equal investment in predominantly Black schools. You know, many Black men say they're concerned that the Georgia Republican Senate candidate Herschel Walker does not represent them in a positive light, given his many public gaffes, history of domestic violence, and being an absentee father. Now, political experts fear that the lack of messaging and attention to Black men could result in Black voters sitting at home on November 8th. So far, 39% of Black voters have been men and 61% women.
I'm really surprised in that take that, you know, the criminal justice issues didn't come up for Black men. They seem to be the most penalized, if you will, by the discrepancies and the illegal use of you know, what the police are doing in regards to entrapment and things of that nature. So I'm really surprised that that didn't come up, you know, in that conversation for Black men.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that people recognize, you know, Black men are not a monolith. Mm-hmm. And while there are Black men that are concerned about issues related to criminal justice reform, among other issues, part of what we were hearing from folks in Georgia, for example, was that Black men were interested in access to capital, right? I mean, people don't necessarily think of Black men also as small business owners. And, you know, as do you. I know you have a number of Black brothers.
Three, you've got.
I've got four, you've got three.
I've got three, and they just want a fair shot. They want the finish line to stop being moved. They want a fair shot. They want to be fairly considered. You know, my brothers, and I'm sure your brothers and many brothers watching in, you know, are educated, highly qualified, and, you know, we deal with, you know, so many issues that keep us behind the eight ball, and we just want a fair and equal shot. And I'm hearing that in that conversation. I'm just really surprised that, you know, the criminal justice issues and how much of a mess that is wasn't like top of mind.
Yeah, a fair and equal shot, but also we want our kids to be safe.
That's right.
Right? You know, we want
police reform. We don't have to give the talk to our kids every next generation. And so black men, get out there and handle business. Moving to Chicago, where a Chicago judge has thrown out 8 more convictions for cases linked to a former Chicago police sergeant who framed dozens for drug crimes they never committed. Judge Erica Reddick also wiped away the sentences of several men who were linked to that officer. Now, this all comes after the dismissal of 44 convictions. Now, back in April, and brought to a number of cases that were vacated, a number of convictions were vacated. You know, the officer at the root of all of this is Ronald Watts, a black sergeant for the department. Watts and another officer pled guilty to stealing money from an FBI informant and was sentenced to 22 months in prison.
And another hot topic here, the Biden administration is moving forward with several student debt forgiveness programs aiming to make it easier for borrowers like you and me to get relief if they are misled by their colleges or if they put in a decade of work as public servants. So on Monday, the Education Department finalized a package of rules that will take hold in July and are separate from President Biden's student debt forgiveness plan, which has been held up, as you know, in court. Now, among the changes is a revamp of the Borrower Defense Program, which offers debt forgiveness to students whose colleges make false advertising claims or even commit fraud, and it aims to help victims of predatory for-profit colleges. Now, Education Secretary Miguel Cardona called it a, quote, monumental step that will make it faster and simpler to get debt relief.
Now off to South Carolina, where sheriffs say the statements made by the president of Shaw University are harmful and untrue. Shaw University is an HBCU and is making headlines after President Paulette Dillard wrote that she was outraged after officers stopped a bus with students on board heading to a conference in Atlanta. Now, the president says the officers targeted the black students and such behavior is unacceptable. But the sheriff's office says it was a misunderstanding, stating that the, quote, Greyhound-like bus had tinted windows and had been swerving on the road, and that race was never a factor in the traffic stop.
Now, Nicolai, speaking of HBCUs, a video shared on TikTok has gained momentum after viewers were left shocked by what they had seen. Now, the video captioned, "Welcome to the HBCU experience," was allegedly filmed at Tennessee State University and has many posing questions as to what could have made this particular professor so upset. Take a look.
I said, what is your name? Out of here, get out. You're a failed this course, whatever your name is. Out! 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 Out!
My goodness. Okay, a Twitter reply to that video shot down the claims of the professor, who you saw was white, being racist, but agreed with everything else regarding the teacher's disrespectful manners. Now, on Professor Robert Pickards, that's his name, on his Rate My Professor page, he is deemed as unprofessional, angry, rude, and has a habit of yelling in student faces, as you can see there.
You know, I just taught a class just yesterday, and I have never spoken to my students like that, and that is absolutely unacceptable. I can't believe that. I'm outraged by that as an educator. Now to the latest in the tragic shooting death of Kershink Kari Ball, better known as Takeoff, from the popular rap group Migos. Houston police are searching for witnesses who may have seen the shooting play out. As you may know, Take was shot and killed this week while at a private event in Houston. Officers say they have a few leads in the shooting, but would like more people to come forward, reminding the community it could have been anyone. Take a listen.
If it was your brother, what if it was your son? You would want somebody to step up.
We have too many young men of color that are being injured or fatally killed, and their future is cut off, and family members and friends are left to mourn.
Now, new reports detailing the shooting of Takeoff says that at least 2 people opened fire at that private event, and the 2 others who were hit by gunfire sustained non-life-threatening injuries.
Today, many are shifting focus from the tragedy to the amazing triumphs Takeoff achieved. Here to talk more on the contributions to the community and culture is Keisha Nicole, host over at 97.9 in Houston. Keisha, thanks for joining us here on FOXSOUL's Black Report.
Thank you guys for having me this morning today.
Now, Keisha, you actually interviewed Takeoff and Migos early in their career. How was Takeoff as a person, and how much did he love our community?
You know, I actually got to interview them early on in their career, and as well as most recently during the pandemic. And first off, they were a family of the Houston community. They were always in Houston. They loved Houston. They gave back to Houston. So Houston's heartbroken that this happened to Takeoff. I know that we opened up the phone lines the morning that it happened. And, you know, I didn't know because we aren't their home. I didn't know if it should shift to let's do the whole show dedicated to Migos and Takeoff, or should we just do a smaller part? And they didn't want us to stop. People were calling in, people were crying because, again, you would see them frequently around the Houston area. So they were like, you know, this is like another home for them.
Yeah, so you've had some personal experiences with the group, and I didn't know that they were actually family. So this isn't just the loss of a member. This is family. They grew up together. They were raised by the same family member, 2 brothers, 2 cousins, and a nephew. Talk a little bit about what you experienced, your time with them, maybe in the studio or maybe out in the field at a concert. Your take just on his personality, his care and love for the community, and the fact that he had been really in this game since he was the youngest and had been in the game since like elementary school, growing up right outside of Atlanta.
Well, you know, Migos meant so much to our culture, right? They were our culture. There was a point in time where everybody wanted to move to Atlanta because during the early 2010s, everybody wanted to be a part of whatever they had going on. And they kind of propelled what was happening in Atlanta during that time. You got to think there wasn't a group of artists that were that big coming out of Atlanta that went into mainstream. There were solo acts, but there were groups, you know. I've interviewed them several times. They were just good dudes. The energy was always great, very respectful. Takeoff, like everybody says, unproblematic, would sit and just, be present where he was. He didn't say too much or do too much. He was just a good guy. So again, it's a tremendous loss for everybody.
Keisha, we have seen this story again and again and again, stories of young Black rappers. There was just a shooting at a Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles in Inglewood, California. Why is it that we see this so often, particularly with Black rappers, not country singers, not blues singers, right? But for some reason, we see this epidemic of gun violence. It feels like it disproportionately impacts young Black rappers. Why is that?
Well, if you think about it, when you go back and think about hip hop reflects what's happening in America, right? Hip hop has always been unfiltered, unbiased. And for some, this is their reality, right? And so when you really look at it, there's an issue, there's a problem with guns, but also there's a problem with resources in our community. So I know everyone wants to talk about why is hip hop so bad? Hip hop always been very unbiased, and they talk about what's happening in their world. And if this is happening in their world, it's happening in America.
Yeah, thank you so much, Keisha, for your insight. We will definitely continue to watch this story as police are asking those witnesses who were at that private event in Houston to come forward with more information. It's just a heartbreaking story, and we just appreciate your insight this afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us right here on FOXSOUL's Black Report, and come back and join us soon.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. It's really a shame that even before Black Lives Matter caught all the heat that they've been catching, I've often said that, our lives have to matter to ourselves first. And I just see this repeat. And it's like a rinse and repeat. I'm so sick of emoji hands and throwing up RIPs and hearts and all the emojis, and there not being a dialogue as to why this continues to happen. And this is like a whole generation of hip hop artists. I remember back in my day, it was the East Coast, West Coast beef, and as a result, we lost 2 huge icons in the game, along with many others, that notably being Biggie and Pac. And at some point,
this has to stop. I don't know who has the answers, where the answers may be, but I think it starts with us understanding and knowing that our lives have to matter to ourselves
absolutely,
first.
Absolutely. It starts with us loving us.
That's right.
And us recognizing that Black life is something to be honored. And so
we're going to continue to do that.
Yeah, we want to do that.
Absolutely. Takeoff was born June 18th in 1994 in Lawrenceville, Georgia, like I said, right outside of Atlanta. He attended Berkmar High School, and before the fame, he was actually making beats like most artists, probably in his mom's basement, and developing rhymes in the 7th grade.
That's right. He made his rap debut with Migos back in 2008, who also happens to be his relatives. Some of their biggest hits being Bad and Bougie, Versace, and Motorsport. Kershnick Ball was 28 years old.
We're going to go to break, but first let's have a moment of silence to remember our brother here and all these young brothers from the rap game that we have lost. We'll be right back right here on Fox Soul's Black Report.